Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, as Americans observe Veterans Day, we often think of sacrifices made by veterans, and it's a year-round topic for many people as well. And today we're focusing on an organization working year-round with veterans, the Honor Flight of the Ozarks. Joining me, we have Steve Bach and Mike Davis and Arla Price. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
And I mentioned to the audience, you came in from Springfield, but you're representing this area. Of course, that's why Joplin is part of this program today.
Yes.
So tying that together, Steve, I think I'll start off with you. If somebody walks up to you and they see your shirt and asks, what does Honor Flight of the Ozarks mean? What is that organization? How do you define it for people?
Just the honor of taking veterans to Washington, D.C. to see their memorials and thank them for their service and give them hopefully some closure on what they experienced, and just can't thank them enough for our freedom.
Great. So you are part of a national structure of an organization.
There's 131 hubs in 45 states, yes.
And Springfield is one of these hubs.
That's correct.
Tying this together. So you're representing people from this region, this part of the area. People might be curious, they've heard about the program, a little bit of history, how Honor Flight came about.
Well, in 2005, there were, in the state of Ohio, Springfield, Ohio, there were some veterans that had wanted to see the they had just finished the World War II memorial, so they wanted to see the memorial, and they took 12 veterans, and that's what started the Honor Flight.
So a small initial flight, and now it's gone nationwide.
Two little planes that flew up there and took 12 veterans, and they saw the World War II memorial. They flew into the VA airfield and went there and then came back home.
Great. So it's grown nationwide. I know now for each of your other involvement, you both of you have been very involved. I know, Mike, you've been involved from a veteran, but also with the organization.
That's correct.
And tying that together.
I have had the privilege of flying on all 11 flights since the beginning.
Out of Springfield.
Out of Springfield.
Organized flights out of
Looking
Springfield.
forward to flight number 12.
Great. And Arla, you've been working as a guardian.
I've been a guardian, and I've been a bus lieutenant a few times, so I think it's a real privilege, and I'm honored to volunteer.
Great. Well, hopefully today we can let the audience understand what we're talking about, how it works, and the opportunities that are out there as well. As you mentioned, for the veterans, people have this opportunity to travel. The organization itself is a nonprofit organization.
That is correct. No government funding, just not all on donations and the fees we get from the guardians.
And how long have you been operating? You say 11 flights out of Springfield. How long have you been flying out of Springfield?
Since 2014. We were going 4, now we're going 3 times a year. We found that going 4, winter was always a
tough time to
a
travel.
Challenge,
cold
yes.
Right. So 3 times a year you have a group of veterans. How many people usually per flight do you try to put together?
There are 83 veterans and 83 guardians. There's a total of 200 on the flight.
Okay. So your organization helps really all the behind-the-scenes planning for these people to put it together.
Yes.
So
And it's big planning.
big process. So we're
Yes.
recording this show in November. When is your next flight that would be scheduled?
It'll be spring. We haven't set the date for it yet, but we just finished a flight last week, and our next flight will be spring.
Right. Well, the process of doing this, I know, Mike, you said you flew as a veteran. Tell us what it's like. I mean, what does someone have to do to say, I'm a veteran, I'd love to go to Washington to see the monuments?
Well, the process begins by going to honorflightoftheozarks.org. Once they access the website, there are 2 tabs. One says Veteran Application, and one says Guardian Application. So either way that they're flying, whether as a guardian or as a veteran, they just click on the appropriate tab. It brings up the application. They will fill out the application, and they can actually submit it online.
So no paperwork to send in. It's right there, and we can see the website on the screen that the people are looking at. Looks like pretty self-explanatory what you need to do.
Yes.
In terms of tying that together. Now you mentioned the guardian side of application. Arla, tell us about that process.
Oh, well, the guardian application, like Mike said, is online, and they require just minimal information, but I would encourage anybody who wants a unique way to say thank you to our veterans. This is kind of a hands-on, wonderful experience for the guardian as well. I know we focus on the veteran, and we want to, but I feel like when I come home, I get just as much as well, and I think the guys would agree.
A lot of sharing between guardians and veterans.
Very much so.
A lot of sharing. It's wonderful to hear the stories.
Very emotional.
Very powerful, overwhelming.
They've had a chance to see what they're seeing in Washington. Now you say it's a 1-to-1 ratio, so you are with the veteran the whole time as a guardian, that you're taking them, helping, assisting them?
You're assigned a specific veteran, and you stay with them all day, and we go through a small training.
Right.
So we know what to do, we know what to look for, and we know what medications they need to take at a certain time, or if they have any disabilities or anything we need to know about their health. And we just make sure that they have a wonderful day and kind of watch out for their safety as well.
Kind of helping coordinate everything, getting them there. Now, Steve, what about people who are watching? Well, what are we talking about in terms of veterans? Which age groups, which wars, which time periods are we talking
Well, when
about?
I got involved, there were a lot more World War II veterans going. Now it's more Korean and Vietnam,
Right.
and because World War II veterans are going away pretty quick.
But if you still are a World War II
Oh,
veteran
yes.
of interest, you can still apply.
Yes, they would go to the head of the line.
So you have a priority system.
We do,
to
we
get
do.
people to go. So World War II, Korea, Vietnam, any other situations where they might have veterans?
All of the conflicts that we've had
So-
are included, any veteran.
Okay.
So, and we have about a list of 250 waiting right now.
So there's a lot of people.
There's a lot of people waiting.
Right. And Mike, you're representing the Vietnam veterans.
Correct.
Having traveled up there. So let's talk. I know we have some pictures that you're going to share with us, but your trip when you went as a veteran, what that entailed, how it worked that day, what was involved for you.
Yes, ma'am.
So I guess we need to explain, you fly out of Springfield. So you start off early in the morning.
We fly out of Springfield very early in the morning. We actually get to the airport and have a pre-flight meeting about 4:30 in the morning. It's wheels up at 05:30. We get to Washington D.C. Reagan Airport at about 8:52 Washington D.C. time.
Eastern time zone.
And then from Reagan, we board the buses, and from the time we board the buses, it's just a very short drive to the
'Cause you're right down there.
to the World War II Memorial, and that's where we actually start our trip. Is the World War II Memorial, and we usually have the privilege of being met by one of our senators. And then from the World War II Memorial, we go to we take a short bus tour through downtown Washington D.C. and see various sites like the Naval Museum and Memorial, and we go by like the FBI building and the different commerce.
Actually seeing the government.
Pentagon.
Yes, the different Smithsonian Institute, places like that. Go by the as close as you can get to the White House and the Capitol building, and then from there we go to the Lincoln Memorial, the Vietnam Wall, and the Korean War Memorial.
And if people are familiar with Washington, that's kind of on the other side of the park area.
It is. It is. I actually believe it's on the Arlington, Virginia side. And then from there, we were going to the Iwo Jima Memorial, but it is now closed for renovation. So then we stop at the Air Force Memorial, we go to the Women's War Memorial, and then we go to Arlington Cemetery and Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
Wow, so that's a lot to see in one day.
It's quite a day. It's quite a day.
Fortunately, we have police escort. We stop nowhere. We stop at no stoplights, stop
So
signs.
they get you through the Washington traffic.
and that's how we can
Yes.
do it in one day.
Yes.
So there's a lot of coordination on both ends.
Yes.
That you're
Very
not
much
only
so.
getting people out of Springfield, but when you get to Washington, you have people on that side helping
That's
you
correct.
through the process. And so forth. And Arla, I imagine that this is a lot for veterans to see. As a guardian, you're kept busy as well, seeing these sites and maybe getting off the bus, getting on the bus.
Yeah, you really have to pay attention to your veteran and know them. And when you're assigned ahead of the day, the travel day, I always call and visit with them and see what they really want to see and kind of find out more about them and just see if there's anything I need to watch out for, fatigue or having difficulty with steps or something like that, because their safety is number one. So that's my main job, is to make sure that they're, and then to point out points of interest.
Right. Now, what about dealing with people who might need wheelchairs, handicapped accessible facilities?
Well, the Honor Flight has all their own wheelchairs now, and we take usually 60 wheelchairs with us in the plane. When we get there, we divide up into 4 buses, so each bus has 15 wheelchairs on it, and that's been very nice to have our own wheelchairs and not have to
So were these
borrowing.
contributed or made through fundraising? How did they obtain them?
Both fundraising and a couple of people underwrote most of them.
Great. So I mean, that's probably a relief for many of the veterans, especially some of the older
Oh,
people
yes.
who have difficulty walking. Thinking there's a lot of walking in Washington if you've gone there as a tourist.
There's about 5 miles for the veteran, but if they sit, my first trip, I had a World War II veteran, and his mobility was great, but he said, you know, I don't want to be worn out when I get home, so will you mind pushing me everywhere? And I was happy to do that.
So that's one of the things you can do as a guardian and
Yes.
help them around in that way. So each veteran, you know what era they're representing. So you obviously went and got to see the Vietnam veteran, the wall.
I did.
Tell us a little bit about that and, you know, your reaction. And we've heard a lot about it, but was that the first time you saw it in person, or?
No, I had seen it on previous flights when I had flown as a guardian.
Okay.
But it's flying as a veteran is a. This is me at the now this is actually me at the Korean War Memorial. The Vietnam Memorial, which is the era that I'm from. Now this is right outside the Vietnam
Plaza
Memorial.
leading into it. Right?
This is actually a tribute to the women nurses that served during the Vietnam War.
So you're representing all areas of the military, women,
Yes,
men, different
yes.
ranks, different.
And you know, being that I'm from that era, actually standing in front of the wall is a powerful and overwhelming experience.
You can see pictures of it. You can go past it casually, but until you're actually there, it makes a difference.
Well, and to see all the names on that wall, and to know that some of my friends' names appear on that wall.
That makes a difference. Now, World War II is a fairly new memorial. I mean, I guess in terms of the memorials there.
2005.
So it's.
Yeah, that was the 2005 is when they finished that,
So,
and it's beautiful.
so the World War II I mean, share some of the reactions that maybe World War II veterans might have in seeing that, because I've seen it's quite an expansive memorial as well.
It's so beautiful. It really is, and it highlights both theaters, the Pacific and the Atlantic Theater, and the World War II veterans I've been with were always surprised at how large it was, because it really is the largest, and it has a large fountain. It's just beautiful. So I think just a lot of awe.
Like
And memories.
Memories from it as
A lot
well.
of memories.
And also there's a way that people can put their veterans' families, put their names up there through some sort of technology, or they can look at themselves up somehow.
Honor their
Honor
deceased veteran.
members and have that memory there for them as well, and tying that together. So you're serving a lot of people, the veterans being able to go out there. Tell me as far as organization on your side, with your getting this plan together. We're a few months away from the next trip. I'm sure you've got this waiting list, people planning. How do you coordinate guardians? Are you looking for guardians? How do you piece everything together to make it
We're
happen?
looking for guardians that have special needs, not needs, but special
Kind of talents?
talents, yes, to pair with certain veterans that have special needs.
Okay.
And we've done it enough that it's easier than it used to be, and it's very, very rewarding.
So when you say special interests, Arla, you had a number of trips. You've just got to be a people person, I imagine. You really have to like to work with people.
You know, I think so. And I'm the proud daughter of 2 World War II veterans. My mom was a WAC and my dad was in the Army during World War II, and they both are deceased now before honor flight came
Before they
around.
started having
So
flights.
my first flight, I took their pictures with me in my backpack, and I said, "This is for you, Mom and Dad." So
So
that's why I love to go.
Sure.
My first flight, I had my dad's dog tags on.
So you're representing him at
Yes.
the memorial.
Because he wasn't with us anymore.
And my first flight, my father was a Korean War veteran. So I made the first flight assisting my veteran, but also in memory of my father.
Right. So do you find that a lot of guardians also have those kind of ties, that they have a
Yes.
family member that they want to kind of keep in mind as they're doing it?
And when you do it, you get hooked. It's pretty easy to get hooked.
Very addictive. It is.
It makes a big difference. Well, one thing we haven't talked about, people are watching and they might say, well, how much does it cost the veterans to take these trips?
The veteran always goes for free. The Guardian is a $500. Their ticket, their meals, their whole day is $500.
All it takes.
And it's a great way. But again, they have to remember that they're there for the veteran,
Right.
not for the sightseeing and tour, but because they have to make that Veterans Day unforgettable.
The veterans going for free, how do you cover those costs? People have
We
said,
do
"How do you
other
raise that money?"
fundraising. Other fundraising we do. We have in the spring we have a big auction and dinner at Bass Pro, and there are other ways that we raise money too. There are a lot of people that donate just because from their heart because they
So
believe
you
in it.
accept contributions for people who say, I want to help you out.
Yes, we do.
Tying that together. So for a veteran, that might be a big challenge is I can't afford to go to Washington or I can't take that vacation trip, but this gets you there.
It gets you there. The veteran doesn't pay a penny.
Right. Do you run into other groups while you're there? And honor flights from around the country. Have you had examples where you've been there and there may be another, I don't know, group from California or something that you crisscross paths?
There were 3 honor flights the last time we were there. There was only us the previous time. That previous time it rained all day, so we had everything.
There was nobody around the memorial site.
And it didn't just sprinkle, it rained all day, and that's the first time that's ever happened, but not one veteran complained. They all just said, we've been wet before.
That's right.
It poured.
It was fun though.
Yeah, but it was a warmer time of year, right?
Yes, it was
Let's see
mid-summer.
that. How about photos and memories? I know, Arla, you have some pictures that you've brought in. Maybe we can show some of those while we're talking as well.
Okay.
Because I imagine as a veteran and as a guardian, and the volunteers come back with memories, but capturing those with pictures.
Oh, it's just so much fun. The last time I went as a guardian, I was a guardian for a female veteran, and I think sometimes we tend to forget that we've got
Women who've
A lot
served.
of
yeah,
female
we've got
veterans.
women who've served out there, and this lady was just so much fun to be with. We just laughed, and it was so interesting to hear her perspective. I've heard so many from the men,
Right.
but not so many from the women, and there were a lot of fun things. She told me she was in the Air Force during the Korean War.
And so they have some specific memorials that tie into the women in their service as
Yes,
well.
we did stop at the Women's War Memorial, and I believe, if I remember right, she didn't even know that existed. So there's not a lot of, I think, publicity. I don't think they get a lot, but she enjoyed the whole day.
Right, so she's able to share her memories and come back and taking the pictures.
Right.
When they return, or when you return, sharing with your family, I know is a big thing. That that veteran comes back. What's their reaction when they come back and their family's waiting for them, or they get to see their
Go
family?
ahead. You're the veteran.
Well, it's pretty powerful because when we land at Springfield, there are so many people, family members included, waiting at Springfield Airport to greet us when we get off the plane. So many different organizations, organizations like the Patriot Guard Riders and Color Guards and law enforcement agencies, a band, ROTC departments from various schools, plus the general public. And they're all just crowded into the airport to greet us. On the last flight, Governor Greiten and his staff was there to greet us when we landed. It's pretty powerful and overwhelming to step off the plane and see all them people welcome us home.
So a real hero's welcome for people as you're coming
and
back.
everybody is waving American flags and holding up signs and hugs and kisses and shaking hands and
this is the first welcome home a lot of them have ever received.
yes.
We got out of the military and they just kind of went back home and nobody
In
was
World
there
War
at the
II,
airport.
they got a nice receive, but after the others that did.
The other conflicts, you didn't have people greeting you at the
No,
airport
we
when you
didn't.
got off the plane.
No, ma'am.
And I think for some veterans, it means everything to have that hero's welcome home.
Now, is that a surprise for many people? I mean, do you tell them about that beforehand, or does the plane land and suddenly they see there's a lot of people?
We try not to. Sometimes, somebody will let something slip, but we try to keep that surprise under wraps.
They hear there's going to be some people at the airport when you get
Right.
there.
And we leave it at that.
And it was huge this last time.
Well, that's great. What about the family perspective? Some people always say, how come that the wife or the spouse doesn't go with and so forth? You're keeping this just for the veterans, so there's no really family involvement with the trip.
Well,
Going on the
children,
actual trip.
nieces and nephews go with their veteran. Wives do not go with their veteran,
Okay.
or husbands don't go with their spouse veteran. And that is, we've that's a national policy. That's not our policy, but we honor it.
Right.
Because the wives were not there with them when they went to war.
They
They
weren't part of that war story, that their life
So,
sharing together.
and there are a lot of veterans that are a little more open and different when they're talking to someone that's not a family member.
Have you found that when you talk to somebody, a veteran might say, I've never told anybody this, but seeing this memorial brings out these memories, things like that?
Yeah. And I do have to say there's a lot of veterans that when we come home at homecoming and they see the crowd, they are scanning the whole crowd for the wife or child or whatever. And it's just, that's why I think it's so important to have that family at the airport when they come home. I think it's more important than the family going with them, just to be there to welcome them home.
But I've been there, and then I'm sure they're sharing those stories for a long time afterwards, after you do
time.
return, and bringing that back.
And they, they talk about things that they haven't thought about in so many years that they've brought up for the very first time.
A lot of veterans won't talk about situations.
And they do so because they are amongst other people just like themselves that have been through so many of the same experiences that they have. And it's easier to open up to
So on a flight, you'll have a group of veterans as you're traveling around start talking to a other. Where were
Yes.
you? What did you do?
Oh yes,
yes.
that's very common. Open up to each other because they both lived the experience.
Right.
a lot of new friendships and bonds are made.
So someone you didn't know at all before the trip, you're meeting them on that trip and sharing those stories.
Yes.
And veterans with veterans too.
Veterans sharing with each other as well and tying that together. Well, when looking at the planning, you mentioned the fundraising, that aspect of how people can help out. Are there other ways? You have an organization, you have a volunteer board, people working behind the scenes. I mean, how
We
that's
have a
structured?
volunteer board in Springfield, and then a number of, and I don't know exact number of volunteers that come out and help coordinate everything for before the takeoff and after the landing and before the flight. So, and we have a training period, a training day on a Sunday afternoon that is 9 days before the flight. So all the guardians and veterans come in and all the volunteers come in and everybody goes over the same thing and gets on the same page and
know what to expect.
knows what to expect.
This is the time we're leaving. You said bright and early. You need to be there in the morning.
Yes.
And
They want you at the airport at 3:30.
3:30.
Period.
You have a charter flight that's scheduled to go at a certain
That's
time.
correct.
And you're going to go at that time.
And the plane's decorated inside with American flags, and American Airlines does a beautiful job of decorating, and it's very patriotic.
So it's a non-stop flight from Springfield to Washington.
That's correct.
So you don't have to change flights with anyone. You're
Nope.
going straight there and tying that together. Do flight crews also kind of make it a special trip as
Oh
well?
yes, very much so.
They do.
They love it.
really do.
So you're there.
They have to bid for these. The flight crews have to bid for these. I mean, and some of them get it and some don't, and the ones that don't get it are pretty upset. They really enjoy serving our veterans.
Veterans. And the attention that you get, from the people serving all the way to the people who are at the sites when you go to the memorials and so forth. I imagine you get some good receptions even there when people notice, oh, here comes the busload of veterans. And do you get a lot of people who pause when you get off the bus? And
I think
Yes.
just tourists will stop and say thank you for your service or ask more about the flight or wonder if there's a honor flight in their town.
Right.
So yeah.
The last flight we were at the Arlington,
Right.
and there was a high school class. There was a senior high school class, and they all made a special point to come over and thank every veteran for their service.
Wow. So that's a
Yep.
nice personal touch.
Well, it
Like
was.
generational sharing and tying that together. Now, do you find that the veterans not only appreciate that, but they feel that they're having an impact on perhaps the younger generation? when that
Yes.
happens?
Yes. To know that they haven't been forgotten, and that their dedication and their commitment to service actually means something to the younger generation.
Being able to share those memories, just the impact of what they've done for our country and tying that together. Well, you've all been involved in many different ways. I know, Arla, traveling as a guardian, what have you enjoyed the most about that aspect of your work?
Oh gosh. I guess just the friendships that we've made and watching their eyes get real big when they see the memorial or meeting a veteran who maybe served close to where they served or took basic the same place or just those ties. It's just like magnets. They just come together and
Makes the world small for them.
It does, and I do have to say there's a lot of laughter on these flights, a lot of cutting up and a lot of laughters, because there's a lot of time to be solemn at the memorials. But to think that these guys are don't cut up, it's not true, because they do. They do. They're having a good time.
And Mike, not only from a veteran's perspective, but being involved in the flights, what do you enjoy the most?
For me, I would have to say the camaraderie between my fellow veterans and the making of new friendships, whether it be, from the Guardians or the veterans, but the new friendships and the camaraderie.
Right. And Steve, of course, you're making the flights, you're on the board of directors. You see the whole big picture, tying everything together. What leaves the biggest impression for you?
The medical staff. We have we take 4 physicians and 4 backup, either nurse or EMT, to help them. And boy, I mean, the physicians are just ready to go at the drop of a hat.
They're there to serve.
And they're there to serve, and I'm impressed by that. They love doing it.
A lot of people giving their time, giving their efforts, and helping out.
Lots of time given.
Well, someone who tuned in late, they're wondering, how do I find out? Let's reps kind of for them, or their website. How do they get in touch with the Honor Flight of the Ozarks?
honorflightoftheozarks.org. Or I don't have the number here, but
there's a phone number.
There's
the website, right?
And they can call the office. It's in Springfield on Sunshine Street, and Kim is there and ready to take their call. And if anybody wants to sign on as a guardian, the last flight we were a few guardians short, and we let it be known over the weekend. I think we were 30 guardians short, and we let it be known over the weekend through some social media and little television and at the end of that weekend, we were 30 over.
Right. So you have a lot of people who step forward for you.
A lot of people step forward.
Everybody came through.
That's great.
Yep.
So if somebody has never done it before, would you recommend it? Give it a try.
I would recommend it. To me, it's a privilege, not just from me thanking the veterans, but in honor of my parents and what they sacrificed. And I would highly recommend it. It's addictive.
It's something that continues to serve.
First time I did it as a guardian, and I did it with my brother. We both went together and had two veterans, and they were next door neighbors in Shell Knob, and so that was quite pleasant to all of us get to spend the day together and make their day wonderful.
So you're all carrying a lot of special memories of what's happened,
Yes.
as well as the veterans carrying it through. Well, I'd like to thank the 3 of you for visiting us today and providing some information for our audience.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you very much for having us.
You're welcome. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at this time on the station. We'll see you then.